She's not doing anything with her life, just sits around waiting to be invited. The sentence floated in with the steam rising from the roast. I had just set the last bowl on the table when Krista said it. Her voice was sweet enough, but her tone had that sharp edge she used when she wanted to draw blood without leaving a mark. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was enough. My son didn't correct her, didn't nudge her, didn't glance in my direction. I folded my napkin slowly, careful not to let it tremble in my hands. "Anyone want more carrots?" I asked already, lifting the serving spoon. I didn't wait for an answer. The hum of conversation picked back up, now safely away from me. Krista leaned into the woman beside her. Someone from Jeremy's office I hadn't met before. She used to be in tech years ago. Before retirement, I guess. She doesn't really talk about it. Another smile. Another sip of wine. The clink of silverware covered my footsteps as I carried plates to the kitchen. Their dishwasher was newer than mine, sleek and quiet. I loaded it one piece at a time, wiping my hands on a towel that smelled faintly of bleach and someone else's soap. When I returned to the dining room, the conversation had shifted to vacation rentals, Italy, or maybe Costa Rica. I sat back down without a word. The seat cushion had already lost my shape. Krista raised her glass toward Jeremy. "To new adventures," she said. He smiled, clinked back, and finally looked my way, but too quickly, and then away again. I chewed slowly, quietly, and let the evening go on around me. After dessert, I helped clear the rest without being asked. My name hadn't been said once since dinner began. By the time the kitchen was spotless, my coat was over my arm. Krista waved vaguely from the couch. "Drive safe," she called out. Jeremy stood. "Thanks for coming, Mom." I nodded. Of course. The air outside had cooled. I walked slowly to the car, listening to the quiet hum of laughter behind the closed door. I always start my mornings the same way. Quiet, steady coffee first, then the plants. The ferns in the sunroom were overwatered by Jeremy once years ago. He thought he was helping. I didn't correct him then either. The soil was dry today. I gave them just enough. By the time I sat at the kitchen table, the light was pouring in, sharp and angled through the blinds. My coffee had cooled. I opened my email, and there it was like clockwork. One of those automated newsletters from Krista's company. Updates from the executive innovation team, the subject line said. No personalization, no pause. Just a glossy PDF attachment and a banner at the bottom. The Vexler Group. My name was still in it. Still there, tucked in the legal footer of every outbound file. A remnant no one looked at anymore. I sipped my coffee and stared at that line. A Vexler Holdings company. They didn't know I still kept 68% ownership. I never corrected them when the acquisition was finalized, and everyone assumed I had stepped back completely. It was easier to let them underestimate me, to let Krista talk about legacy brands and turnarounds while sipping her imported tea. I reached across the table and pulled out the old tablet. It still had a screen protector peeling at one corner and a faint crack running through the corner from a drop years ago. But it worked. The login screen blinked awake. I typed in my credentials. They hadn't expired. The dashboard came up just as I left it. Financials, executive metrics, voting records. I tapped through slowly, not rushing, not angry. Krista had been promoted 6 months ago. I'd missed the announcement. She was now a vice president of strategy, reporting directly to a board I chaired on paper. She had no idea. I opened her personnel file, skimmed it. Then I opened a blank folder and labeled it quietly, Krista, internal use. I didn't know yet what I would do with it, but I knew this. I wouldn't be waiting for another invitation. The folder stayed closed on my tablet for 2 days. I didn't open it again until Thursday morning when I saw Krista's name in a subject line forwarded from an old colleague. It was a press deck from a private leadership seminar, some upscale retreat in Lake Tahoe. I hadn't been invited, I doubt they realized I was still on the background distribution list. I clicked. There she was on slide 7, Krista L. Wexler, Vice President of Strategy Wexler Group. No mention of marriage, no mention of Jeremy, just the name sitting there like it had always been hers. I scanned further. Bullet points danced across the screen, familiar phrases buried under flashy fonts. Legacy-driven growth, quiet restructuring, founder-informed intuition. I knew those terms. I coined them. I'd used them in early funding pitches long before Krista ever stepped into our family. Then came the quote. As heir to the Wexler legacy, I've always believed in balancing tradition with evolution. Heir. I read it twice. The word sank in slow. I thought about the late-night dinners where Krista asked me about the company's early pivots, how we survived the first economic dip, how I negotiated supplier rates during a drought in global manufacturing. She'd asked so many questions, smiled at all the right moments, and now here she was, holding those answers out like they were her birthright. I minimized the window and pulled up the company's internal archives. I searched by keyword. One by one, her project reports surfaced. The phrasing echoed conversations we'd had over meals, coffee, birthdays, whenever I happened to let my guard down. I opened one file and copied a paragraph into a comparison tool. Matched 87% to a memo I'd written 8 years earlier. I leaned back in my chair. It wasn't ambition. It wasn't inspiration. It was theft dressed as charm. I clicked back into the folder marked Krista, internal use, and added the file to a growing list. Then I flagged the press deck and forwarded it to compliance. Quietly, without comment. By the end of the day, a new report was waiting in my inbox. I called Jeremy that morning. It had been a while since I'd invited him to lunch without an occasion. He hesitated before saying yes. The pause long enough for me to picture him checking with Krista first. Sure, Mom, he finally said. I can make time this week. He picked the restaurant, a new place downtown, with soft lighting and brick walls meant to look historic. He arrived 15 minutes late, eyes glued to his phone as he slid into the booth. Sorry, he said, typing something before looking up. Krista's under a lot of pressure at work. Big project rollout. I nodded. I heard. He didn't ask from where. Didn't ask how I'd been either. Just signaled for water. He talked about the restaurant, about a friend's promotion, about the traffic on the interstate. Everything but what sat between us. The silence filled the air like humidity, thick and heavy, invisible, but undeniable. I stirred my soup, let him speak. Sometimes listening is its own kind of strategy. When the check came, he reached for it. I let him. You doing okay, Mom? He asked finally. It sounded like an obligation, not concern. I'm fine, I said. Always have been. He smiled, relieved maybe, and told me Krista might be up for an industry award soon. She's been working like crazy. They're noticing her now. I looked at him and saw it, how much he wanted to believe his wife was everything she claimed to be. That's nice, I said softly. He glanced at his watch, promised to call soon, and left before I finished my tea. I sat there a few minutes longer, letting the warmth fade. When I got home, I opened my tablet. The HR directory was still bookmarked from years ago. I typed a short message, factual, not emotional, and attached the compliance flag I'd received earlier that morning. Then I hit send. No warning, no explanation. Just a line of quiet accountability waiting in someone's inbox before the day was over. The report landed in my inbox 2 days later, flagged confidential. It was longer than I expected, 17 pages, including attachments. I opened it slowly, letting each line settle before moving to the next. Krista hadn't just stretched the truth. She'd torn through it entirely. There were screenshots of her forwarding internal product briefings to an external firm, one I recognized. They were old consultants we'd once used for legal structuring. She had no authority to share those documents. But what stopped me cold was the signature at the bottom of those forwarded emails. Marlene Vexler Strategic Oversight. Internal copy. I stared at it. She'd typed my name there, not as reference. As author. I clicked on the metadata. She'd copied sections from archived memos and pasted them into new drafts as if they were her own, sprinkling in my name to add weight, maybe hoping no one would check. Or worse, assuming no one would care. She had sent those emails over a month ago. Long before that dinner. Long before she called me just there. I kept reading. Statements from junior staff, complaints about directionless leadership, vague strategies, contradictions in reporting. Krista had used my name to override decisions. Twice. Once in a budgeting meeting. Once in a client proposal that had been pulled last minute. HR had flagged the patterns as suspicious. Legal had begun their review. I reached the final page and saw the summary recommendation: internal breach of policy. Pending board review. Grounds for immediate termination. There was a space below marked executive response. I didn't fill it in. Instead, I downloaded the file, moved it into the folder I'd been building, and renamed it Krista. Final. Then I went back to the main dashboard and checked the schedule for the upcoming board meeting. I clicked Request Review and uploaded the file. No commentary. No notes. Just the evidence. I marked the internal document as reviewed and shut the tablet. By morning, the agenda had been updated. My request was at the top. It was called as an emergency session, limited attendance, executive level only. Most of the board joined by video, a few in person. I arrived early and took the seat at the head of the table, the same one I used to sit in before the acquisition. No one questioned it. They remembered. The room was quiet, cool. My name was still etched faintly into the brass plate in front of the chair, polished over, but not replaced. Krista entered 5 minutes late, laughing at something on her phone. She wore one of those fitted jackets she liked to pair with sharp heels, the kind of outfit that dared people to underestimate her. Her voice filled the room before she'd even looked up. Then she did. Her smile dropped so fast I almost didn't catch it. She scanned the room once more, eyes darting from nameplates to faces. When she looked at me, I held her gaze. I didn't speak right away. I waited until the last board member signed in, until the video squares had all lit up with familiar faces. Some of them hadn't seen me in months. One of them gave a small nod. That was enough. I opened the folder in front of me, laid out 3 sheets, highlighted sections visible. "There's been a breach," I said, steady, clear. "We'll be following protocol." No one interrupted. No one asked what kind. Krista sat down slowly, her hands suddenly unsure of what to do. She glanced around the table, searching for something: support, perhaps. Recognition. She found neither. The head of legal cleared his throat. "We've reviewed the documentation provided by Ms. Vexler. The matter concerns multiple infractions, including unauthorized disclosure and impersonation." Someone on the screen raised their eyebrows. Krista opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I didn't look away. The room held its breath as the next steps were laid out. Temporary suspension pending final review. HR would notify her by end of day. Her access would be frozen. A follow-up hearing scheduled. No drama. No raised voices. The meeting adjourned in under 30 minutes. By the time the sun went down, the process was already in motion. The system worked faster than most people expected when the right signatures were in place. I didn't need to be there to watch it happen. At 5:12 p.m., I received the first confirmation email: access revoked. At 5:27, another followed: equipment retrieval in progress. At 6:04, the final one arrived. Termination processed. I read them in silence at my kitchen table, the same spot where I used to plan quarterly budgets and product launches. The same spot where Krista once sat, asking for advice she pretended to value. I set my tablet down and walked to the window. The street was quiet. Porch lights flicked on one by one across the neighborhood. I wondered if Krista was still in her office when the notifications hit her phone, or if she'd already left confident that the world still bent around her. I didn't picture her face. I'd already seen enough. Later that evening, a courier dropped off a sealed envelope company property forms for record keeping. I signed them, dated them, and placed them in the outgoing pile by the door. The house was too still but not lonely. Just settled. In another part of the city, movers were boxing up Krista's things office plants, framed certificates, a pair of heels she kept under her desk. The cleaning crew would clear the space by morning. The company logo outside her door would be polished, her nameplate replaced. The next day, HR sent one final email. All materials returned. No incident. I typed back only 2 words. Received, confirmed. Then I closed the thread, deleted the folder labeled Krista, final, and emptied the trash. My screen went blank, the reflection faint but steady. Somewhere Jeremy would hear the news before the weekend. He'd call eventually. And when he did, I'd already know what to say. I shut off the tablet and turned off the light, leaving only the soft glow from the window behind me. Jeremy called the next evening. I didn't recognize the number. He must have borrowed someone else's phone. I almost didn't pick up. His voice was tight, flat around the edges. She didn't mean it, he said. I didn't say anything. She's devastated. I could hear the hollow in his chest when he said it, the scramble to make it sound more urgent than it was. But it wasn't urgency. It was damage control. I leaned against the counter and let the silence stretch. She's been crying all day, he added. She says she didn't realize what she was doing. I waited. She thought it was harmless, he said finally. Just branding stuff. She didn't think it'd go this far. Jeremy, I said softly. She used my name to manipulate internal decisions. She forwarded confidential documents. That's not branding. He didn't reply. I'm not angry, I said. And I wasn't. I was done. That was different. There was a long pause on his end, the kind where words get weighed and abandoned. Then quietly, she'll rebuild. I'm sure she will. She says she wants to apologize. In person. I don't need that. He let out a breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. She says she feels like she lost everything. She didn't, I said. She just lost the illusion. He went quiet again. In the background, I thought I heard a door close. Footsteps down a hallway. Someone whispering, maybe. I pictured him standing in a room he no longer knew how to defend. A room where the echo of silence finally caught up with him. I thought you'd be furious, he said. I was disappointed. That's worse. He didn't argue. I'll be by next week to drop something off, he said. If that's okay. Let me know ahead of time. I ended the call and placed the phone face down on the table. No shaking hands. No racing pulse. Just a stillness that had weight, but not grief. Outside, the wind shifted. I turned back toward the stairs, ready to finish what I had started. I hadn't been in the upstairs study in over a year. The last time I climbed those stairs with intention, Krista had just asked if she could borrow the space while working remotely. I said yes, thinking it would be temporary, thinking she would ask before claiming it as her own. But the door had stayed shut for months after that, and I let it. Now, with the door open again, the light fell in across the carpet in the same pattern it always had. Nothing dramatic, just the slow return of something that used to be mine. The desk was still where I left it, a little dusty but solid. I opened the drawers and found the small notepad I used to scribble ideas on. The ink had faded. The imprint of words still showed through. Krista's books were stacked on the windowsill, leadership memoirs, brand theory manuals, hardcover editions with untouched spines. I packed them into a box without reading the titles. They would be useful to someone else. The bottom shelf still held a plaque from the company's 10th year. I brushed off the dust and placed it back on the desk. I printed a new sign, just a small one, framed in silver. Vexler and Cozy, established, never retired. I set it beside the lamp. I didn't sit down right away. I stood at the window watching the same trees sway outside the same street I'd watched through long nights and early mornings, when the company was still new and I was still proving myself. The view hadn't changed. But I had. Downstairs, a soft chime from the doorbell broke the stillness. I turned and moved toward the stairs, my steps steady. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I didn't dread whoever it might be. Some things no longer had power over me. Some things never should have. At the bottom of the stairs, I paused, listening. Then I reached for the door and opened it. I kept the invitation simple. Just a few close friends, the kind who knew me before the company, before the marriage, before the name Wexler meant anything outside my own front door. I cooked myself nothing elaborate. A roast fresh vegetables bread still warm from the oven. No place cards, no curated playlists, just space, just warmth. The house was quiet before they arrived, and still quiet after the doorbell rang and coats were hung and wine was poured. The kind of quiet that holds, not hides. We didn't toast. No one asked for speeches. We shared stories in the rhythm of real conversation, comfortable, uneven, honest. Jeremy arrived after the salad course alone. He looked thinner. Not physically, just less certain around the edges. He stepped into the kitchen, hands in his pockets. "I didn't want to miss it," he said. I nodded. "There's still plenty." He offered to help carry plates. I let him. We didn't talk about Krista. No one asked where she was. No one filled the space she used to take up. At the table, I sat at the head without thinking. The chair was mine, not reclaimed, just remembered. Jeremy took a seat to my left across from an old friend of mine from the early startup years. They talked slowly at first, then with ease. The meal lasted longer than I expected. No one was in a rush to leave. After dessert, I collected the dishes, and someone else washed. I didn't offer leftovers. I didn't send anyone home with guilt or worry or explanations. When the house emptied and the lights were dimmed, I walked through the dining room one last time. The table was cleared. The chairs tucked in. My glass, still half full, sat where I'd left it untouched, but not forgotten. I brought it with me as I turned off the lights and climbed the stairs. The house didn't feel full or empty. It felt mine.